it in my head today that I wanted to redo one of the cake recipes and show you, because it's something I have for dessert many times a week and it's really wonderful. But I had to think about how it would be perceived by you guys and how I should do the measurements, because like I said, I weigh everything, plus I'm so used to doing it that I don't necessarily break things down in the right steps when I go to show somebody. So you might have seen there's a dessert cake recipe on the channel now, but it's a long pan and it makes 8 servings. But I've started to make it in these round cake pans and cutting it in 4. And I make 3 flavors now, so sometimes I'll end up with Trino 12 in the freezer, and then I can have, every other night I will have one, and I can have a raspberry and a caramel and a chocolate. And I wanted to show you especially the chocolate today, but the base is pretty much the same, except when you make the chocolate one, unless you don't care that it'll have more calories, then you take the calories away somewhere else. So the one I'm doing today is chocolate. I'm using this cocoa powder, 4 tablespoons of it, so 2/8 cups. So when I make it, afterwards I cool it and cut it and I freeze it so they're in like wedges now, like pie. So right now I just have, well, they're stuck together, but a raspberry and, oh, here's one. I think this is the apple cinnamon. Anyway, when I'm done fixing it, it's apple cinnamon. And I heat them on a plate, nice and warm, and I pour over a pudding sauce, and I've showed you that before too. Here's one. This is, I think it's the cheesecake. So you can do this with many different puddings, and it's skim milk and water, and you make a lot more liquid than you would when you're making normal pudding. So play around with it so you get it to a loose, but not too watery consistency. So you can do pistachio over the raspberry cakes or over the chocolate ones. You can do the cheesecake, which is so good. You can do butterscotch on the caramel one, or you can do vanilla with caramel, sugar-free caramel syrup, and then you have like a caramel pudding. You can use the raspberry one where you make it like raspberry and pistachio pudding, and then just a tiny little drop of the sugar-free raspberry syrup. These things are incredibly expensive, and they're not necessarily necessary for this. So I try to put my ingredients in measuring cups, even though I weigh them. I've got whole wheat flour, soy flour, loose oat bran, not steel oats, not oatmeal, not cut oats, loose oat bran. That's what it says. Sometimes it says raw on the bins. Skim milk, fake Splenda, egg beaters, baking powder, applesauce, water. That's it. Now, the apple cinnamon one, you add cinnamon. When you serve it, you top it with this Walden Farms apple butter. That's what makes it apple. The raspberry one, obviously you don't put the chocolate in, but you use some of the raspberry syrup. So in your regular bowl here, I've got about, a little less, 1/2 cup of soy flour, 1/4 cup of the oat bran. I don't weigh the oat bran, I know that's right. About 3/4 cup of the whole wheat flour. So baking powder, gosh, be generous with it because it helps it to rise. By generous, I mean at least a tablespoon, a heaping tablespoon. Well, I forgot, this is half my recipe, just a tablespoon should do it. Remember, the original recipe was for that long pan, so I've had to cut it in half. So that's why it seems like I'm hardly adding some ingredients, but that's how you keep things low calorie, right? So mix your flours together. Sift, I'm sifting. Okay, and then in a plastic bowl, I don't normally like bake in the air. That's too funny. Alright, so it's now I think it's 1/8 of a cup because I'm making them smaller. Is that right? I rewrote the recipe and everything. Okay, it's a quarter cup of the applesauce. And then 1/8 of a cup of the egg and 1/8 of a cup of milk. Could be. So I'm using the same measuring cup, I'm just not filling it up all the way. 1/8 egg, quarter applesauce. Oh, it's still a quarter cup of milk. That's good. And don't forget your Splenda, because it won't taste very good if you don't sweeten it. And I have a cup of water out there. I have to check my consistency and I'll know if a cup of water is right or not. About 1/3 a cup of, this is Walmart brand Splenda-like sugar substitute. Okay, so you whisk that together. Whisk. And then you start adding the flour and the water, until it's the right consistency. And you can add your cocoa. I think I'll go ahead and put the cocoa into my flour. I said I was going to use 2/8 of cups. Maybe I'm using a quarter cup. I'm so used to using the 1/8 of cups when I do it because I make peanut butter chocolate cookies too. I've come to really love this cocoa. Even though I bought it so I could make chocolate hummus, which did not turn out good. Not at all. Doesn't seem as chocolatey as usual. Maybe I usually use more chocolate. I don't know. Okay. I was making spaghetti sauce. I'm going to bring the camera over here so you can watch me do the consistency thing. The oven's on 350. I have a really funky oven in this apartment, so I think I used to cook it at 350 for 30 minutes at my other place. So you're going to have to definitely cook it long enough, make sure it's coming away from the sides of the pan, bounces back, all those things. Not even start to get a little brown around the edges because you don't want it to be wet. So 350, maybe 40 minutes is a better expectation. And not that spray, it doesn't have to have flour in it. You don't have to do the Crisco in the flour and shake it and all that stuff we used to do. Not necessary. Trust me. I'm back. I had to move everything into the dining area so I can get to my table. And I spilled some water. I can't work like this. Seriously, I can't. I'm making a big mess. It's going to become neurotic. So you whisk it. Remember your lessons from home ec. Don't over stir your stuff. So look, I'm teaching you how to make cake from scratch. How about that? And remember, I used wheat flour, soy flour, and loose oat bran. And I'm moving the bowl away probably from the camera. So that was a cup of water. Here we go. I think I need a little bit more. Probably going to be like 1.25 cups. You don't want to make it too wet, and you want to cook it long enough. I think those are the most important things. Not too wet. Cook it till it's nice. This is so yummy. Alright, I don't want to risk stirring it, like I said, or making it too wet. here's the 8-inch pan. If I move it any further, I'm going to drop it on the floor. Okay, so I'm scraping out every last bit of batter. It's okay, it's not supposed to fill the pan. Remember, we're making something that's low calorie, and sometimes it's low calorie because of portion control. So, and actually this is such a big piece of cake for 120 calories. So, alright, I'm going to bake it for probably, I'm going to check it at 30. I'll probably bake it for 40, and I'll show you the cake when it's done.